and welcome to this week's episode of Content and Narrative. So this week we'll be looking at Kiss the Girls by James Patterson. It was published in 1995 and then made into a movie in 1997. Now, as usual, I'll be looking at four things. I'll be looking at the plot, I'll be looking at the film, I'll be looking at the book, and I'll be looking at overall how well does the film take from the book. Now I'm going to change it up a bit. I'm going to do my analysis of the film and the book first, and then I'll have a look at the plot and how that works together, and then I'll look at the overall at the end. So first things first, the film. Now this is a very great tense thriller with Morgan Freeman. Now, Morgan Freeman plays the main character, Alex Cross. He goes into an investigation because his niece is missing. So he basically goes all the way down and he goes, right, okay, this is my niece. And then he ends up finding out that it's not just his niece missing, it's a variety of women that have been missing for quite a while, and a couple of dead bodies as well. So it's sort of like a big investigation that he wasn't told about. So it then follows this sort of story of this story of cat and mouse between Alex Cross and Casanova, who is the person that's keeping the harem of women. Because with Casanova, so there's two serial killers. There's the gentleman caller and there's Casanova. And they end up sort of twinning with each other. So you've got sort of like one in one place that just loves the brutality and the killing and likes to keep souvenirs. And then you've got Casanova, who sees himself as a lover of women and he collects women. So if you're extraordinary, if you're fantastic, Alex Cross's niece is really good with the violin. So she gets taken because of that. And it's sort of like this game of cat and mouse with Alex trying to figure out who Casanova is and trying to save all these women at the same time. Honestly, I've seen this a good couple of times, and every time you pick up on little things to sort of give you that, oh my god, it's him at the end. And honestly, just to let you know as well, there will be spoilers. As usual, I do discuss it in its entirety. But anyway, so we sat there, and you kind of sat and you're going, right, okay, so they've got so-and-so, and it's just such a great film because it has you on the edge all the time. And then when the big reveal comes at the end as to who Casanova really is, it kind of blindsides you because you didn't see that one coming. Now, if you've read the book first, you will have known. But you sort of like sat there going, oh, damn, that's fantastic. And I think it's a fantastic thriller, and I think it's fantastically done. And I would definitely recommend this film. It gets an 8 out of 10 for me. Now, the book is very, very well written. But with the book, you do get points of view from both the hunter, the hunted, and the person that hunts the hunters. So I love the way that the storyline dips in and out of the gentleman caller, Casanova, Alex Cross, even with the women as well. It sort of like intricates all of those storylines, and I love it. I actually do. It kept me interested right until the end, and I couldn't put the book down. And then if it had you trying to guess who Casanova is, giving you little hints about, oh, he's got the perfect wife and no one will ever know and all of that, and it's just like, oh. So when you do find out who Casanova is right at the back, like even you get close at one point, but then he's close but not, close but no cigar, and then right at the end you find out who it is and you're like, whew, good. And honestly, I could not put the book down. And the fact that I'm normally very good at picking up who the killer is, and that kind of had me stumped. I think when he got close but no cigar, I was like, oh, I think I know who it is. And then when it was actually revealed, I was like, oh, I was right. But it honestly had me right until that point. I could not figure out who Casanova really was. So I will recommend this book. It is a fantastic thriller. It keeps you on your toes. It has the point of view of both the serial abductor, the serial killer, and the monster hunter, as it were. And if you're looking for a good detective novel as well, this is the book for you. And I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 for the book. I really think it's that good. So then we go on to the plot. Now, the plot is very different in parts because obviously there is a lot from the book. It is quite a chunky book. So the plot does take up quite a bit, but not as much. So the book and the film start in a very similar fashion. However, in the book, it's more descriptive about the gentleman, not the gentleman caller, Casanova living in the walls of the family, and then what he does to the family. Whereas at the beginning, it's sort of like a little, it's somebody saying, I was somebody living in the walls, and then this is what I've become. So you've got that. You've got where Casanova kind of begins. Then you get an introduction to in the book to the other killer, the gentleman caller, which obviously, you know, in the film you don't really know that there's two killers, you just know that there's one. Now, in the book, we first introduced our protagonist, Alex Cross. He's with his two small kids, which he doesn't have kids in the film. He gets called out to a little boy who has suffered knife wounds, self-inflicted, unfortunately. In the film, he's helping kids with so that's how we're introduced to Alex Cross. But in the film, he's helping kids with boxing and everything like that. And then he ends up at a crime scene, talks a woman down from killing herself, goes off, gets home, and then realizes that something is terribly wrong because everybody is around his house. So when we pop back, so we do then pop back over to Casanova in the book, who is in the process of killing a girl that he's abducted, as she broke his rules. And we see that in the film as well as the book. It is a little bit more descriptive in the book. I'm really glad they didn't go as vicious in the film, as it were. And then we find out about Alex's missing niece, Naomi. Now, a big difference I have noticed so far is Alex's friend Samson, who is present in both, but in the film, he's not really at his side. He's sort of there at the beginning. He's there sort of like halfway through, and then he's kind of there at the end, and that's it. In the book, he seems like a more solid presence, and he even travels down with Alex at the beginning. And also we do get a lot more from Casanova's point of view, and we are introduced to the gentleman caller. So Samson and Alex go down to where Naomi went missing. They're left for a while out, sort of like waiting, and then they're invited out to a crime scene where the murder has taken place, you know, the one that we witnessed. Now, that's in the book, so they're left on the edge. In the film, he's left on the edge, but then he goes to find the people that have left him. And as he goes to find them, he sees this big wallboard with all these pictures of women and realises that something big is happening. And then they get a call about the dead woman. So then he travels out with them. So in the book, you get the head of the FBI, God, I don't know why I couldn't say that, come out to the murder and suggest that Casanova is a collector of women rather than a killer. So it's, you know, killing is secondary. But in the film, the local police have the jurisdiction, and later Alex suggests him about being a collector because he's looking at the wallboard and going, these are all brilliant women, these are all fantastic women. And then that's when he mentions about him being a collector. So it's just little things like that, like, you know, Alex is the one that comes up with it in the film, but in the book it's the FBI. Now we come to the abduction of Kate. Now, in the film, she's a very good boxer and owns the family home that she's lived in all her life. In the book, she does karate and she rents a room in a battered, rundown house because that's not where she grew up. But in both, Kate is aware that someone is in the house. She fights him off and ultimately loses to Casanova. So we then switch back to Samson has now left Alex alone down south in the book. And as Alex starts poking around, he comes across the realisation that all the missing women are extraordinary, are absolutely fantastic. So Casanova at this point as well kind of leaves a calling card for Alex, almost as a come catch me kind of, pretty much confirming the theory that everyone he collects for a reason. So then we go back to Kate, who is now awake in her captor's lair. And in the film, Casanova is in the room with her to give her the lay of the land, the rules, everything like that. In the book, however, it's a letter to Kate that tells her about the rules, tells her about the consequences of what will happen if she doesn't follow the rules, and outlines the situation. But we do also get Casanova coming in every now and then to control her a little bit, which we don't really see in the film. And in the film, we see maybe 2 interactions with him and her, but in the book, he comes in quite a bit. So now we find out about Naomi's boyfriend in the book. Now, in the film, we found out about him a little bit earlier. Now, he's a little bit rough around the edges. And in the film, Alex starts off not liking the boy, but in the book, he likes him pretty much straight away. Now, big difference is in the film, he becomes almost part of helping find Naomi. In the book, you meet him once and then that's it. And then you meet him right at the end. And it's just sort of like, okay, fair enough. You don't really, in the film, he seems more of a bigger part of the investigation. And now we come across Alex's friend in the FBI. So in the film, we already met him at the murder scene. But in the book, it's a little later and he offers Alex a deal. So basically he says, you work the case, but you only liaise with me and I'll give you all the info that we've got. Is it a deal? And he goes, yeah, it's a no-brainer. So that deal never really happens in the film. It's suggested that this deal has happened, but you don't really see it. In the book, it's a yes, this is 100% what's happened. So then we see Kate breaking out. We see Kate breaking the rules set out by Casanova because she's calling out to the other girls because she wants to know, what's going on. So then in the book, we get an interlude of the gentleman killer, and he's killed over in another state. But also, Alex pops back home to Washington to see his family and kids, and this isn't in the film. So you get more going on between Kate in the cell and Alex investigating in the book than you do in the film. And in the book as well, Alex has picked up a link between Casanova and the gentleman, which you don't discover in the film until much later. So at this point, they don't really know about the gentleman caller. It hasn't really come across their radar. Whereas in the book, Alex sort of knows about this gentleman caller, and then he starts picking up on a link and going, something's not right here. But then we do get Kate managing to escape from Casanova because he comes in to try and drug her to then kill her, basically. She hits him and then runs out, and she's in sort of like a haze. She jumps into a stream and she gets away. She's found by some boys, and then she's in a hospital room, which Alex then stays with Kate in hospital. In the book, it's a little bit longer. In the film, it's kind of one night. But then Alex as well figures out what's going on with Kate because she doesn't seem to be reacting well to what they're putting her on. So he figures it out in both the book and the film and ends up kind of bringing her back to a semblance of normality. Now, in the book, it shows Casanova's perfect real life with his wife, which we don't see in the film at all. So I can understand why they didn't, because it's probably harder to keep the identity secret in a film if you're showing a perfect life, because you go, oh, that guy's about the same size as that guy, and do you know what I mean? And then in both, we get Kate hypnotized to sort of try and remember where she was and where she ran from so she could help rescue the rest of the girls. Now in both, Naomi, who is a genius on violin, ends up having to play to all the women that's held captive by Casanova. And Casanova always has like a gun and a stun gun on him so that the women don't feel that they can rush him and get free. But then we get the possible identity of the gentleman caller. Now in the film, it's because Kate thinks he could be Casanova. So they then follow the lead. They go to his house, into a house in like a cabin in the woods. They find a girl, they rescue her, and they find the shrine. In the book, it's because the gentleman caller kills the reporter who he has been communicating with about his crimes, but she has a possible identity on her laptop. Now, in the book, we get the big FBI sting that is following and observing the possible gentleman caller. But in the film, it's more of a ragtag group led by Alex and Samson that go out and kind of follow him. But then in both, they do save the girl that then gets kind of kidnapped by the gentleman caller before she gets killed. But the saving of the woman from the gentleman caller in the film is a quick shootout. And then he gets away. In the book, there's a shootout. He drives away, Alex jumps on the top of the car, and he's kind of holding on for a while until he gets thrown clear of the car. I mean, fair play to Alex, he he didn't want to let go of that car. Now, a big thing that is a difference is in the book, there seems to be a romance between Alex and Kate. They seem to really be blossoming and, will they, won't they kind of romance. In the film, it's kind of suggested that they're just good friends, and it doesn't go any further than that. It doesn't even look like it's going to go any further than that. So anyway, in both, they find the gentleman caller's little stash of trophies from his kills. Then they see a picture leading them to who they think is Casanova. However, in the film, they were working on the theory that this guy was Casanova until this little bit of info. In the book, they realise that the gentleman caller is different to Casanova. So in the book, there's a long surveillance job going on the guy that they think is Casanova. In the film, they raid his house, find a secret sex room, and haul him in, only to realise that he is a patsy. So obviously I understand in this instance why the film went a little bit quicker, because you don't want to sit there watching people, observing people for ages. So I can understand why they made it a lot quicker. So in the film, the gentleman caller ends up at Casanova's hideaway with the girls. Casanova almost hates him as well. When he ends up in the hideaway, he's like, you could have led them here, you've ruined everything. And yet in the book, they seem like really good friends, like best buddies almost. And it's a weird one because obviously Casanova is kind of shown as a lone wolf, but is kind of helping the gentleman caller, but kind of puts up with him like you do like a little brother or sister. But in the book, they seem to be really reliant on each other and the friendship. So, you know, in the book, it takes the gentleman caller a little bit longer to get over, and you know, we come across him killing some people as he goes along. Now, in the film, Casanova doesn't come back for Kate until the very, very end when all the women have been found and the case has been concluded. However, in the book, both the gentleman caller and Casanova come for Kate and pretty much end up putting her in a coma. They beat her within an inch of her life. They mutilate her and they kind of leave her to die, as it were, as a, you know, warning to other people. So then we come to the realization in the book that Casanova isn't actually the professor they thought he was. So Casanova has clearly framed the professor in the book so he can get away and is being very accommodating to the gentleman caller. And in the film, Kate, Naomi's boyfriend, and Alex go out to search for the hideaway. They hear a gunshot and Alex runs in. So the gunshot is Casanova shooting the gentleman caller, or I think it's the gentleman caller shooting Casanova, trying to shoot Casanova. But so then he manages to chase the gentleman caller out, kills him, but Casanova gets away. In the book, however, he's out with Samson and they're hunting, and just when they're about to give up, Alex starts shooting in frustration, and then they start hearing girls screaming. They find the underground lair, they run down, Samson gets stabbed in the back, Alex gives chase to the gentleman caller and Casanova. He ends up killing the gentleman caller, but noticing something about Casanova during the shootout, and they think that that Casanova's got away. Now, in the film, after the killing of the gentleman caller, Kate invites Alex round for tea, but then Alex has figured out who the Casanova is at that point. So in the film, you know, everything's settled down. Kate invites Alex round for tea, sort of like a farewell. But then Alex goes, "Hang on a minute, I think I figured out who Casanova is." And we find out it's Detective Ruskin, who's been helping with the investigation the entire time. Which honestly had me. I was like, little things, I was like, it can't be. And then when you watch it again, you're like, oh yeah, of course. So then he comes in, Kate's given up a good fight, and then Alex pretty much just kills Detective Ruskin. So that's sort of how the film ends, with, you know, Detective Ruskin being killed, and that's sort of that there. But in the book, Alex starts digging into the past about the gentleman caller, then finds a clue to figure out who Casanova is. Now, he thinks it's Detective Sykes, who's Detective Ruskin's partner. And at this point, I was then thinking Detective Ruskin in the book, because obviously you're close, but then you're not. Turns out, so he stakes him out, you know, beats him up, and it turns out it's not him. He's not Casanova. So Alex then goes on with his life, has a will they won't they with Kate. Then they go out into a little hideaway as a lure for Casanova, who takes the bait, comes in, we figure out it's Detective Ruskin. Kate again knocks 10 times of crap out of him. Alex ends up shooting him, and they kill Ruskin and life goes on, and it kind of just ends there. So the plot differs very differently in both. There was a lot more description in the book, and the plot in the book as well has those point of views from the serial killer and the serial collector as well, which I would have liked to see a little bit more of, but I can understand obviously you've got to fit enough into a film. There are little differences, like the gentleman caller and Casanova actually being friends in the book, but in the film they almost, you know, hate each other. And I do feel like I understand why they streamlined the story, but I would have liked to see a little bit more of the killer's point of view. So in regards to the plots, I'll give it a 5 out of 10, because it kept the bigger points, but it did change a little of the smaller bits. Now, overall, the characters were very similar, but they did seem to underdo Kate's character in the film. She doesn't seem as badass in the film. In the book, she's sort of she goes through hell and she keeps coming back. In the film, it's sort of like she goes through a little, obviously it's still hell, but it's not as much. And obviously Samson in the film doesn't seem a bigger part as he is in the book. And you don't really get the full showdown between Ruskin, Alex and Kate as in the film. It's only really Kate and Alex. But they did keep the major plot points in. They did keep a lot of the same people in as well, and apart from axing Alex's kids for some unknown reason, you know, they did keep sort of a couple of the perspective shots from the monsters. I could have done with a bit more. I think overall it gets a 6 out of 10 for me. Now, this is of course my own opinion. I'm happy to hear if you disagree or agree with anything that I've just said. Please leave it in the comments below. Click subscribe so you're alerted when the next video comes out. Now, if there are any books, film adaptations you'd like me to do, again, leave it below in the comments. I have got quite a long list that I'm working through, but I'm going through as quickly as I can. Now, join me next week for my contented narrative around The Body, which is also known as The Stand. It is a Stephen King novel. But till then, remember to always keep it contento.